Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I am Arup K, Chatterjee, and I'm joined by a very special guest all the way from Indiana. This is Professor Ashwani Kumar. He is currently a visiting professor at Indiana, and we will not go further for some special reasons, which are also in tune with the times that we are living in. But Professor Ashwani Kumar has a much larger identity, mercifully. He is a poet, he is an author, he is a social scientist. Professor Ashwani Kumar is a professor at Tata Institute of Social Sciences. He's the author of a number of books, including my favorite, which is a book of poems, Banaras and the Other. Professor Ashwani Kumar is also known to me and to many of us as an expert on caste discourses. In fact, Professor, you would remember that 2 years ago we interacted about an article that I wrote in the Indian Express on the history of caste during the independence movement.
India.
You shared some very insightful remarks. So maybe we would discuss a little bit about caste today. But what I really wish to talk about today, sir, is some of your recent articles, beginning with your extraordinary take on Dharamvir Bharati's Andha Yug. Now, you say, or you, I don't know if you claim exactly, or you suggest that we are living in an age when we have to confront war. Am I right, or am I taking it too far?
No, 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 absolutely. I'm like the whole idea that I, in fact, revived. I remember, writing this piece and, sharing this piece, Andha Yug. And Andha Yug is not literally in the sense of Arup, you are a far more lyrical author, writer, and intellectual. So you can imagine that, the very word Andha Yug today has become, politically incorrect, So we can't call anybody Andha or blind. But the fact is that, we are back to Andha Yug, the age of blindness, metaphorical. I mean, like, this is also about our collective failure to confront war as ugly political, social, and moral reality. In that sense, if you look at the new age war, Andha Yug becomes, and remember, Andha Yug is coming from where the background, the partisan, genocide, the partisan horror, and then, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and in 54, Dharamvir Bharati. And it surprises us, Arup, because Dharamvir Bharati is also famous for a boiler, Gunaho Ka Devta. I mean, like anyone growing up in the 50s and the 60s, coming from Allahabad, I'm also from Bihar, so I can imagine reading Andha Yug as a pulp literature. And my dad never allowed me to read, this, Gunaho Ka Devta. So a writer of Gunaho Ka Devta moving into and producing a great classic, his favorite of all times. If you ask any director, any film director, or any stage director, Abraham Al-Kaji to anyone, I mean, like, just, so that's where I'm looking at, the present scenario of war, the Ukraine war, the horrors in Middle East, and also the millions of smaller wars all over the world, that's kind of really, bringing us back to this age of blindness, Arup. Are we really blind in terms of, moral blindness, ethical blindness? Where are we heading into? And for a poet and a writer, it becomes a huge, moral crisis. How do we look at this age, I mean, like, I'm writing, war poems, exploring different aspects of the war. It's not about A nation or B nation. It's not about blaming A leader or B leader. It's looking at the larger, civilizational truth, If you look at, as a student, a friend of Ashish Nandi for more than 4 decades, I'm reviving that also, I guess, how Ashish used to mention that, are we heading into that kind of a war situation where it's a kind of industrial slaughterhouse? Remember, Ashish talking about, the more masculine, hyper masculine, hyper nationalist, hyper patriotic, bringing together the different strands of Eric Fromm and also Tagore, that wisdom, that civilizational truth, what is it that's happening? New age. I mean, like, look at this war, drones are up. People are not dying, I mean, except in Ukraine where the young, 18, 20 plus soldiers are dying. But in the
Hmm.
middle, you just imagine we are watching, not like, a spectacle also. This
Hmm.
is something, that's where I'm trying to bring, what I call Habermasian guilt. The great professor just passed away. You know, before passing away, I think Habermas' lasting contribution relating to Andha Yuga Arup is to look at, the civilizational truth of our guilt, confession,
Yeah.
confess.
Also,
You can.
so since you are mentioning Professor Ashish Nandi so fondly and so prominently, Professor Kumar, what has been striking me of late is also industrial amnesia. So there is the industrial slaughterhouse, but there's also mass scale amnesia and mass scale chilling effect, and which is why after the last war broke out, I chose to write, despite all odds, an article on the history of India and Iran ties, civilizational ties, and it was amazing for me how quiet we had become, how absolutely, and by we I mean a lot of nations. I do not mean one particular nation. I just meant there was this absolute acceptance and absolute amnesia. Anyway, before I digress. I just wanted to, prod you a little further because you wrote wonderfully on how Dharamvir Bharati, after the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombings, he has remade the Mahabharat, and the Mahabharat has this character of Duryodhan in Dharamvir Bharti's play, speaking certain lines which go on to suggest that न्याय किसी के पक्ष में नहीं था. So these are reimagined lines by Bharti, of course, and you very wonderfully comment on that. Would you like to walk us through your thoughts on that? Very. I thought it was a very controversial statement because the Mahabharata clearly had a victor and had losers, and the losers were people who had gone against dharma, and the victors were those who had followed dharma. But Bharti gives a very different interpretation. So, what was your take on that?
I think Arup is a really, very profound way of looking at Mahabharata. But let me share with you where I come from. I'm also looking at a civilizational contrast. I'm also looking at and placing Andha Yug in a wider, civilizational and moral arc, comparing and contrasting, Western civilizations and also Eastern civilizations. If you
Hmm.
look at, the history, starting from Greek through, history of, West, and the West, if you remember, Gandhi called satanic civilization.
Yeah, yeah.
What did Gandhi to,
Satanic Mills of Manchester.
deride in such a derogatory language, I mean, like severity of the language, just look at Gandhi's severity of the language,
Western Western civilization would be a good
satanic
idea, he
civilization.
said.
Satanic civilization.
Yeah.
I
No,
mean,
yeah,
like,
the Satanic Mills of Manchester, and then he said Western civilization would be a good idea, meaning it never
yeah,
existed. Yeah.
yeah. So Arup, I'm trying to look at, how, the war is, looking at both theological, political and moral context, which led, even Aquinas and others, including contemporary philosopher. I've never been a student of Walzer. I'm an American grad too myself. But, they coined this phrase, resuscitated the idea of just war. Look at, and when you come back to Mahabharat, the
Mm.
mythic memory of the war, the the very mythic violence, and the sanitized violence, So this is where I'm coming from. And this is where, Dharamvir Bharti is so profound, so insightful,
Mm.
and if you look at the machines, the war in the West, from Greek to Roman, Roman more instrumental, and then medieval, and then you come to world wars, so and look at the modernity, the whole history of modernity is
Yeah.
embedded into war and violence, Arup. Extraction, imperialism, and then First World War, Second World War. Now here is Mahabharat. And in this Mahabharat, Arup, totally disagree with this. Some of my liberal friends would disagree with me, but Mahabharat is not a binary war.
No,
Even
it is
in
not. I don't.
yeah,
I don't think it's a
more
binary.
ambivalence,
No,
more ambivalence,
even,
more ambivalence.
people watching this, I mean, episode, I think some of them might be surprised to know that the Kauravas also went to heaven. By the way, so
Yeah,
they were. take. So it's not about binaries. You're absolutely right. I
No,
believe.
and with the dogs and the cats too. I mean, like, dog lovers. I've written poem in memory of Arun Kolatkar. The dog at Kalagoda.
Yeah.
So yeah. So I mean, even I just quote from Mahabharat. At the end of the war, everything happened, and here is Yudhishthir. Telling Krishna, "Oh Krishna, I'm neither a victor nor a vanquished. I think we all lost the war. We all lost the war." I mean, like this whole recognition, this recognition that we have lost the war is primarily coming from what Gandhari said. धर्म कहीं भी नहीं था, किसी के पास नहीं था. You see that spin. You see that Dharamvir Bharati's innovation, the feminist lens, and here if you look at and this is the last episode, the last parva that Dharamvir Bharati has used only after war, the aftermath of war. And here Gandhari says that let me open my eyes, let me just take off my veil and let me see. I mean, like, this is what my son is doing. I guess let's recognize that why Krishna in such a severe language like Gandhi, see. And this is where I'm trying to look at and contextualize Gandhi, Krishna, and Dharamvir Bharati. They using such harsh language, severe language, that Ashwatthama will be wounded forever, bleed, bleeding forever, and throughout the century for using Brahmastra. So imagine if you are thinking about and even using the rhetoric of using nuclear weapon, what they have done already, Hiroshima and Nagasaki. I mean, like, I remember giving a Fulbright talk on possibility of nukes, nuclear war in South Asia, and look at in South Asia. Arup, so in this kind of a context of South Asia, we have perpetually living in a kind of a slaughterhouse, in a poetic way and also in a material way. This whole memory of partition, the violence of partition, and then also the nukes. But fortunately, with the quirky history, with the mythic history in South Asia, it seems that we have learned to live with it. That is why it seems that but what the Bharati did much before India and Pakistan went nukes, realizing us, reminding us that who is going to be Ashwatthama, who is modern Ashwatthama. I'm asking you, I'm asking audience, who is so burning with the revenge, that even the mother tells that my son, don't do it.
I mean, who do you see Ashwatthama in all of this? In Because Ashwatthama, as our audience would like to know, Ashwatthama was cursed for 3,000 years, and at the end of Kali Yuga, he would die, or whatever would happen to him, he would rot and go to hell. And this was the curse that was given to him by Krishna, as you said. So, in this generation of South Asian battles and global battles, what do you think is Ashwatthama? Where is Ashwatthama in all of this?
Let me tell you, I mean, like, this is where my idea, this is where, if
Yeah.
you look at my new poems as a scroll and other places, frequently I'm writing about this, and this is more, I'm, like a writer, an artist, and a poet. I'm suggesting, metaphorically and also politically, I'm politically conscious that, and I'm using something that should not startle and make people uncomfortable. There is a Swatam, and I don't think that Krishna, gave him a time bar, like
Yeah, of
like
course.
the government has given time bar, 3,000. In fact, Krishna was so severe for Anantakal, for Anantakal, it's not just limited to Kali Yuga or the Yuga. Anantakal, So that's where I'm telling you. There is a Ashwatthama everywhere, every lane. In others, Ashwatthama is living within us, And this is where Nandi's insight becomes profound. This is
Right.
where Eric Fromm's insight becomes, and let me just startle that many of us today, middle classes, upwardly mobile, the riches and elite, have this necrophilic dreams of winning a nuclear war. That's where things are happening, Arup, sadly and tragically. So if you look at philosophers, writers, and the poets, reminding us again and again and saying that what has happened in Andha Yug can be happening anytime, everywhere. I mean, like, we are so blinded, indifferent, that we're not thinking of, and we have normalized Ukraine war. We have normalized, bomb.
Exactly like Ashish Nandi would say, we had normalized the assassination of Mahatma Gandhi. We were complicit
Indeed, indeed.
in that
And
assassination. So
some of my writer friends have aestheticized also. They live in that necrophilic world. And this is, let me quote you from my new work, will be out shortly. It's just, Tomorrow Express, where I'm saying that, how is strange killing people in a slaughterhouse is not a crime. There is nothing left of language after you have cleaned its bones, festering like ancient orchids. There is no cure for feuding nations over mushroom clouds. Everything is predetermined and repetitive. Even the memory of the bridge my father built. Is it blood or ink we sacrifice? Will war ever end? I am not sure. This skepticism is the skepticism of Mahabharata. This is coming from there. With the Krishna, with the Yudhishthira, they are talking to each other and thinking about the larger moral compass, and the universe. Will war ever end? I'm not sure about it. Where is Ashwatthama now? I guess, Ashwatthama is living with us. We are wounded, let me tell you, and to close this part, we are wounded and we are bleeding forever, all of us. It's a collective guilt. That is why Dharamvir Bharati is so relevant today, perhaps more than when he
So,
published
and
it.
that's why we need a collective catharsis, which is not coming exactly. So,
Not at all. Not at
this is a very very heavy subject, and I think we will be heavy for a very long time, Professor. But to take you to some local issues, certain things
Please.
that we can tackle with relative ease, if not complete ease, and that is your favorite state and mine too, Bihar, but mine is Jharkhand actually, after Bengal, that is. So because I've spent most of my time there, but when I was growing up, the part of Jharkhand was also a part of Bihar. So coming to Bihar, another subject that you write of a lot, and you have been writing about particularly two themes. One is the caste census, and you've also spoken about this.
Yeah.
And the other, of course, is women's reservation. Coming to caste first, Bihar is one of the most caste conscious states of India. I don't know if you'll agree with that. I surely think so. And there are good aspects of it, and some
But
less.
Arup, being Bengali, I guess, what is wrong with that? I mean, like, the Bengalis are less caste conscious, but now Matuas are all over.
No. But when I say caste
I'm
conscious,
just teasing.
I mean a lot of the caste,
Yeah, yeah,
dynamics of Indian politics does depend on Bihar and Uttar Pradesh,
yeah,
and
indeed.
you've been also. So if I must clarify, then the reverberations of caste census actually emerged a lot from Bihar. So Bihar and
Yeah.
UP were the hotbeds. Anyway, my questions to you are as follows: Do you think the Nitish era is ending or has ended?
No,
Uh,
I
what
don't
do
think.
you think? Oh, yeah, what do you think will be the impact of that on Bihar's caste, consciousness?
I guess, I'm really happy to share with the audience here and with you also. I've kept you updated during my coverage of Bihar elections. I was, perhaps, I don't know whether I was fruitful or not, but I was very productive, and kind of, I'm working on a book, it's a sequel to Community Warriors, almost, writing a contemporary biography of Bihar. That's why, I did some 9, 10 pieces on Bihar. And this is where, for Outlook, I did a piece as soon as Nitish exited from Bihar. Nitish may go. I mean, like, there's no doubt about Nitish may go. But the question is here, what's going to happen? Bihar, if you look at, is a laboratory not just of caste, but also pagan movements. If you just look at, subaltern movements, I mean, I'm
Mm.
giving a more,
Exactly.
theoretical
Yeah.
spin on that. But if you look at also, the socialist movement, Arup, and also, social justice. So the Nitish codes, and this is where the risk, Nitish codes, the governance may be a bit, kind of, uncertain. We don't know exactly. Governance is very, fragile idea, and very, very, part dependent idea. But what will happen, the legacy of socialism, the legacy of social justice. Bihar cannot be looked at from the left or the right perspective, not from the right wing, not from the nationalist perspective. Bihar has to be looked from this perspective of a longer tradition, political and moral tradition of grounding Bihar into socialist, peasant, and social justice
So
traditions.
before I forget, Professor, I was at a panel recently launching Dr. Virappa Moili's book. It's called Nyaya Shastra, and it's based on Nyaya philosophy. And I was just thinking, the founders of Nyaya philosophy were born and raised in Bihar. The
Indeed.
golden ages of India, which we are quite rightly proud of, was mostly concentrated around Bihar, Patliputra, etc. And is so and then we use nationalist rhetoric, but we are not able to bring productive changes in Bihar. So don't you think that's one of the greatest ironies of our times, that the place that we really take so much pride in, and we should, but the same idioms that we derive from that place are not perhaps helping it, the
Arup,
idiom of nationalism, that is.
Arup, kind of, I'm looking at, the longer arc of the history. I
Mm.
mean, like, if you look at the history, if you look at the civilizational arc of Bihar, indeed, indeed, from Makhali Gosal, the materialist tradition, the Nayar tradition, the Buddhist tradition. I come from the land of Buddha. I am from Bodh Gaya
Exactly.
myself. Bodh Gaya, Mahavira. So if you look at, and when I was writing Community Warrior on caste militia and caste massacre and the violence, everybody asking me why Gaya is so notorious for violence, the land of Buddha and Mahavir. Tell me that. I mean, this is where I guess, you leave out of the history. And this is where I'm again back to Nandi. I mean, like, history not much, relevant here. I think history most as a mythopoetic sense, in a mythic sense, perhaps allows us to look at Bihar, but not in the real history, the way EHKR would look at history. That's not very relevant in understanding what's happening in contemporary Bihar. And this is where, if you look at, Bihar is also, let's not forget, the land of, Sher Shah. Let's not forget that,
Yeah.
that this Afghan, king comes, and then builds, his empire in, Sasaram. I don't know how many people even know Sasaram. How many people have gone and say his tomb there,
Well,
and how many.
I surely know, but yeah, I take your point.
And
From,
and
from a women's reservation.
comparing, Arup, because I'm working on, his land revenue records, and kind of king he was within just 6 years. And also look at GT Road. You are a
Grand Trunk Road,
railway
exactly.
genius.
And
Yeah,
also, Patna Sahib, uh,
Patna Sahib.
Patna Sahib, Guru Gobind Singh. So,
And I also the Patna as a capital, what we call Aजीमाबाद. अभी मैं
yeah.
गया था पटना साहित्य अकेडमी. मैंने कहा आइए हमारे शहर अजीमाबाद, ये शायरों का शहर है. Many people were just uncomfortable. How Patna could be Shahar of Asairoka? It's a land of mafia, gangsters. I mean, these are something that, it's kind of a Nepal, the post-colonial, perverted gauge, that everything that happens in Bihar is about gang. It is about mafia. But you forget that it is here in Azimabad. It is here in this city. Only the Sairi and the shires flourished. So this is where I'm telling that, let's rethink about Bihar. Let's think about, Bihar, not just only in mechanical part dependent ways of understanding, but Bihar continues to inspire us. And this is where Bihar, the British civil servant said, the heart of India. You just look at Bihar, heart of India once again. When I did this piece for Hindu and I
Mm.
started mentioning about the caste census, I mean, like, what I call data based justice without using AI. Bihar is certainly becoming AI justice land. In that sense, I did a piece for Outlook once again, the land of Harris, the land of Haria, the land of Renus. Don't forget that.
Fanishwar Renu, of course. The
And the
land of
land
the land of Rudyard Kipling. I must tell you, when
yes,
Rudyard Kipling wrote his very famous essay Among the Railway Folk, he did not choose Bengal, which was the budding ground of the railways. He chose Bihar. So
yeah.
it's also the land of Rudyard Kipling. It's also the land of George Orwell. He was born in
I've
Motihari.
been to his house. I've been to his
Yeah,
Motihari house.
yeah,
And
and
his father was really a lover of opium, the good quality of opium, better than the Afghan opium, but better than the Afghan opium.
so, Professor, on that intoxicating note, I think we have come to the absolute end of our conversation. But I very much look forward to your rejoining us in India. When are you coming back, if I may ask?
I will be just shortly with a new book, working on my new collection, Loss of Ordinary Things.
Mhm.
But perhaps what is lost in a poetic sense is gain in the larger sense.
Yeah.
Look forward to that.
All right, dear audience, thank you so much for joining, and thank you, Professor Ashwani Kumar. I hope you can please ask our audience to like, share, and subscribe the unofficial seminar. And Professor Kumar, I very very much look forward to seeing you back in TISS in Mumbai, and very much looking forward to your next book. And I
Thank you.
hope you rejoin me on the unofficial seminar.
Thank you very much, Apu. And wonderful. I read your Ram Setu, and that Ram Setu, that the mythic bridge,
Mm.
must go all over the world, and then makes the world more beautiful. That's what I'm looking forward to.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much, and
Thank you.
and
Bye-bye.
thank you, sir.